Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Urmi and in today's video, I have the pleasure of having a special guest. To tell you a little bit about herself, her name is Diletta and she's a freelancer English and Russian teacher and language coach with 5 years of experience. Since the beginning of her career, she has been pursuing the idea that if you want to help someone to learn a language, you need to be able to actively listen to their needs and specific problems and help them find their own method instead of teaching them grammar rules and delivering standard courses. Especially in the past few years, she has been focusing on helping professionals overcoming their fear of speaking languages. She has a YouTube channel and Instagram page where she gives tips on how to improve speaking and other language skills and debunks all those language learning myths that often keep students from reaching their language goals. In her free time, she likes to read thriller books, playing video games, practicing calisthenics, and studying languages. She's currently studying her 5th language, Icelandic, and her goal is to reach an advanced level in Russian. So welcome, Diletta. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone.
How are you doing today?
Pretty fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of hot here, but I live in southern Italy, as you know. So yeah, it's always hot in Italy.
Yeah, we all envy you right now. I'm in Canada and I wish I was there. So let's start. Tell us a little bit about Language Nomad and how did this start and the whole concept behind it.
Yeah, so Language Nomad was born, well, officially last year when I decided that I wanted to give everyone tips on how to learn any language. So previously, I had only helped Italians overcome the fear of speaking English, but then I decided I wanted to help everyone. But the concept behind it, I think it has always existed since I started my career 5 years ago. Because, back then I only knew one method, which was teaching, okay? But at the same time, I hadn't learned English thanks to a language course or thanks to a teacher, but thanks to my own method. So at some point, I understood something that is very common in language learning today, in the language learning coaching field, that you cannot actually help someone with a course. You cannot teach someone a language. You can teach them strategies, techniques. You can teach them how to be curious, how to explore, and become good at exploring. So exploration is the key point, which is what nomads do. This is why Language Nomad.
Okay. And you're talking about, it's all about like teaching strategies and techniques and tips. Could you share some of the tips? Because I've seen on your YouTube channel, you have so many tips and I think those are like valuable tips. So maybe you can share like one of them and then we can like dig a little bit further on some others that I've seen that I want to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah. Is there any in particular that you would like to know more about?
Yes, there is one in particular, which is like learning a language without living in a particular country. What about this one? Because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with unless you're like in the actual place, you're not able to learn a language, but you can even if you're not there. So maybe let's talk about that one.
Yeah. And this is one of the biggest myths also behind language learning, that you cannot learn a language unless you live in the country or you've lived there before. So the thing is, I think that we learn a language abroad because we are constantly surrounded by inputs and because we have like a big internal push, survival, right? We need to survive to learn how to communicate. So we can bring these two elements to our country in a sense by immersing ourselves, meaning doing all those reading, speaking, listening, writing activities in the second language, but that we would do naturally in our language, okay? So things we're actually interested in, and also knowing ourselves, meaning that we need to understand how we work, how we learn, respect our limits, respect our rhythm, and also try to be able to concentrate on the process, on the pleasure of the process instead of the results. Because the more we are focused on the results, the less we're actually going to achieve the result, because we are so stressed that our mind shuts, right? It shuts down. It's a perfect machine, right? So it protects us. But if we're doing things with pleasure, with desire, will learn faster. So that is the key point in a sense. And I'm the living proof, because I've been to England only once in my life, but even before then, I could already speak English pretty well. So I've learned it on my own, completely in Italy, in Sicily to be specific.
Yeah, I do agree that when you're not living in a country, you can still bring the country in you, and it's really
Exactly.
finding ways to like make sure that you're like, I'm writing and speaking, you know, I'm talking like just in that particular language, and that's how you're gonna like improve. And I do agree that sometimes we're so focused on the end results that we forget about like enjoying this whole process, because you also get to learn other things, you know, it's not just about the grammar, you also get to learn like the culture, the tradition, the
Yeah,
people. So there's a lot more than that.
exactly.
And in your YouTube channel, you also talk about how to improve your grammar in any language. And I do want to emphasize on this because I feel like it's like grammar in every language is always very hard, and it's probably the, I don't know, the most boring thing that people have to deal with. So tell us a little bit how to like improve your grammar in any language.
Yeah, and I agree with you, especially in very distant languages, or when a language is very, very close to its old ancestor, like Icelandic, for example, okay? That is when grammar gets very complicated. So the thing is, you do need to try to understand it with your logic and memorize it, because it's totally useless. What I usually do is, first of all, I get an overall idea of how the language works. Of course, it becomes easier. I mean, the more languages you can speak, the easier the process becomes, okay? But I usually get the overall idea, and then I actually study the grammar rule only when I need it. Meaning when I need it, for example, I'm reading a text and something, and I bump into something that it's strange, you know, it's something that I've never seen. I understand that it's some grammar that I don't know yet. So I go back to my grammar book and I look for it. And when I find it, I try to understand how it works. Or when I want to communicate something and I understand I lack, for example, I don't know, the past tense in that language, okay? I go back to my book and I have an overall idea again, and I try to use it. So I don't start from grammar and then go to text or whatever. I start from the authentic material and then go back to grammar, which is why I don't really love maybe textbooks, you know, like the language course books, because they start with the grammar. But I don't like this method really. And well, to recap, you get an overall idea of how that rule works, but then your work is to find it. Whenever you read something, look at it, be exposed to as many examples as you can to actually learn it and imitate. That's the only way to learn grammar, in my opinion.
Yeah, you know what? That's how I actually learned English. Because like I learned English while I was in Italy, and my professor used to hate teaching us grammar. So I remember we would never open a book about grammar, and we did it a little bit the way you explained it. Like we would basically start reading in English, speaking in English. We would start like listening things in English, and then we would walk backwards on the things that we were lacking on. And that's how I learned the grammar. So I totally get it, because it's like it's a very dry material at the end, grammar, you know. It's like you just have to memorize, and sometimes it's not like effective when you're just memorizing. So I really like this tip.
Yeah.
All right, so you, in your channel, you also talk about which like, do you talk about application that people can use when they're learning a language, and there are so many out there. Is there a particular one that you would like recommend to people?
Yeah, you mean like language learning apps or in general
Right,
apps?
the language learning apps, yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, I always say that I'm not a big fan of language learning apps per se, okay? Because they are very good supplements, because they are, but if you only use them to learn a language, they're not going to be useful and you're going to just drop it, okay? But there are two apps I always recommend using. One is Anki, which is also software, okay? So you can use it on your computer, but it's also an app, which is very good if you want to memorize words, chunks, patterns, sentences, your own. So you actually write them, okay, the ones that you want to learn, and the program or the app knows exactly when you need to see it again to memorize it. It's a very, very good app, okay? And the second one is Tandem, which is a language exchange app. And I'm a big fan of language exchange apps because you find people to communicate with, okay? You create a relationship, something real. So the language becomes alive in a sense, okay? It's not like reading some vocabulary, trying to memorize it, and that's it, like with language learning apps. With language exchange apps, you find someone. So you make the language alive. And of course, language learning becomes more real, more entertaining, and so on. So definitely Anki and Tandem for different purposes, of course. Yeah.
And for Tandem, I'm assuming it's just like writing when you're exchanging, like when you're speaking to the person, it's just you're just chatting with the person, or you can actually like talk to them.
You can do both.
Okay.
You can chat. It's very similar to WhatsApp, Telegram,
Okay.
and so on, because you can hop on a video call if you want. You can chat. You can exchange voice notes, for example. So it's very complete from this point of view. Or you can organize, just meetings on Zoom, whatever. You just say, okay, yeah, let's meet at, I don't know, 2 p.m. and that's it. So yeah, like WhatsApp or
Okay.
Telegram. Yeah.
Okay, I really like this last one actually because I'm not a big fan of language application, to be honest. I think someone suggested me to download Duolingo. I did that and I was like, I'm not sure how much I'm actually learning through it. But I think the second one that you mentioned, I think could be a bit more useful because you're actually interacting with someone. So you're almost forced to use it and you're almost forced to like, come up with vocabulary, find out vocabulary. So I think it's like pretty good. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's very useful. Very, very useful, really. Yeah.
All right. And you also said, so basically like in your introduction, we talked about there are some common myths when it comes to like learning a language. So is there any particular myths that you want to share that you want to like, say that this is not actually a myth?
Yeah. The biggest one, in my opinion, especially among Italians, okay, is that in order to speak confidently or speak fluently a language, you need to know many words, especially native speakers' words, which are something that don't exist, okay? But there are there is a lot of content on that. So speak like a native speaker and you'll be fluent, you'll be appreciated, and so on. Then there is another one, which is you need high motivation to learn a language. I always say that motivation has very little to do with learning a language. You actually need to understand what you like. Motivation is very high at first because you're doing something new, but then if you don't know how to keep it going, it's just gonna drop. So you don't need colorful notes or a very strict language learning plan and so on. It's not useful, not in the long run. And there is also another myth. Well, actually, another myth is the living abroad, right? That's one of the biggest myths, for sure. There are actually many, many language learning myths. You need to study a lot if you want to get faster results. That's a myth, because maybe if you don't have energy, you can study as much as you can. You will not get the results. And maybe there is another one, the one about talent. You need talent to learn a language. It's not true. I'm not talented. I've recently learned that I'm not talented. I don't have a talent, but I have curiosity. And I'm good at analyzing things. So I know how my brain works and I use it in language learning. So it's not connected to talent. It's connected to how much you know about yourself and use those elements in learning a language, which is different, So these are maybe the 5 biggest myths. Maybe I think I've mentioned 5 probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the first one that you mentioned. Not the first one, like you mentioned one of them, which is like finding what you like and it's not about the motivation. I think I agree on that because I think sometimes when we learn a language, sometimes we are in a situation where we have no choice. And I think that's where it makes it like demotivating, like we don't feel like learning a language. And I think it's really finding like the language that you really want to learn. Because I think when you find something that you really want to learn, something that you really like, I think what will drive you to like learning a language is the passion and the love that you have for this. And I can say that for myself because like now I'm trying to like work on my Spanish, and you know what? I enjoy every moment of it. I'm just doing it on my own. I'm like, I don't need the motivation. Like I actually enjoy the whole process. So I agree with that. All right. So I want to ask you like one or two more questions. I know you said you speak 5 languages. So I want to know what these 5 languages are. And then I also want to ask you about your experience with learning Russian and Icelandic.
Yeah. Okay. So 5 languages. Well, of course, Italian. Okay. Sicilian, because I consider it a
Yes,
language, right? It's a
yes,
language that, of course,
yes,
I learned here, so I didn't need
yes.
to study it. I'm not very good at speaking Sicilian, actually, but of course, I can speak it. Well, English, Russian, and a bit of Icelandic, German, but I speak so little that I consider like one language, okay? Icelandic, Finnish, and German, very little, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the 5 languages. And my experience with Russian and Icelandic it's completely different because I studied Russian at university with the school method. So I was good at it, okay? But I couldn't speak it at all. And I started learning it again last year, this period actually in March. And since then, I've been progressing so much, because I've used my own method. I started respecting my rhythm and so on, and I started speaking more. I have a speaking partner that I met on Tandem, by the way, on that language exchange app. Yeah. So I speak with her once a week. And I love it now. I'm not scared of it anymore. I was scared of it when I was at university. Okay.
Okay.
With Icelandic, it's different because I started learning it last year, and it's a very complicated language, a very complicated one. And at the moment, yeah, I'm not studying it very consistently, okay, because I'm feeling like it's not my priority. My priority is Russian at the moment. And if I studied Icelandic right now, I know that it would be like I would be forcing myself, and I don't want to do it. I know that eventually I will go back to it, to learning it. Not at the moment, actually. So it's different. It's pretty different. But I could already speak a little Icelandic anyway, even after some months. So yeah.
Nice. But what really made you like choose Icelandic as a language? Like, why did you choose that?
Because I like the way it sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very hard. I usually decided to learn a language when it's distant from Italian. Like I can't speak Spanish, I can't speak French. I can understand them, but I've never studied them because they're too similar to Italian. So it's like they're not stimulating enough for me. That's it. I really like the languages, okay? I love them, but it's like they're not stimulating to me, okay? I need a language to be very, very, very distant from Italian to be stimulating. And yeah, if I like the way a language sounds, I'm probably gonna study it for sure. And I love the way Icelandic sounds, so that's the easy reason why.
Yeah, I really like how you say like you want to learn a language that is like very distant from Italian, like very distant to what's very similar to what we know. Because I never really thought about it like that, but I think it's actually a pretty good strategy. Like, let's learn a language that is different from our native language. You know, it's like it gives you a little bit of stimulation. I think you really like the challenge that comes with it. You know, the more distant it is, the more challenge it comes with, and I think that gives you a little bit of more stimulation.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
if you like challenges, for sure. If you like challenges, then it's stimulating. If you don't like challenges, then it's not stimulating. It really depends on you. Yeah, on you, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like people tend to go with the easier path usually. Like, let's just learn what's very similar and don't just go with that, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is good, you know. It's still good if you can do it. But to me, they're not stimulating. It's just that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you for coming. And before we go, maybe tell us where people can find you.
Yeah. YouTube and Instagram by simply Language Nomad. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will put all the information in the description below so people can connect with you. I will also put the name of the two applications that you talked about.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you once again for coming here today. It was such a pleasure to have you here, and you shared so many great tips, and hopefully people will find it very, very useful.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone else, so this is at the end of the interview, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.